Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's episode, we are going to learn all about networking, the power of networking. And I know some of you are cringing, and maybe you're anxious or you're nervous because you hate networking. But my guest today, Anthony Markey, is going to make it very easy for you, very simple for you, and take the nervousness out of networking. Anthony, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, Anthony, where in the world are you?
I'm in the Des Moines, Iowa area, so just on the edge. I have city 5 minutes that way, cornfield 2 minutes that way. So, nice blend.
Perfect. You're right in the middle. So, Anthony, you are going to talk to us about the power of networking because there really is power in networking. But first, let's hear a little bit about networking personalized for you. So, can you share your journey and how networking has played a pivotal role in your life? So, first, how did you get introduced to networking? How long have you been in this space?
Yeah, so networking, it's something I should have been doing way sooner than I started. But once I've been self-employed for 7 years. So once I got my toes in the entrepreneurship world, it kind of starts happening. You start going to events, you start meeting people, maybe people that are in the same industry as you, and you're just kind of making friends because it can be a little bit lonely if you're a solopreneur. You don't go to a you don't go to an office, you don't have your coworkers. So you might join a chamber of commerce, you might go to events based on whatever it is you're doing. Meet other people in the industry, but then you kind of start going a little bit deeper. You start reaching out to other people that maybe are in adjacent industries, people that you can find relationships with, and it kind of snowballs from there. But the baby steps are just kind of engaging with your local community, because then you can do that as just a person, or you can do it as an entrepreneur, business owner. But that's kind of how it started for me.
Let's talk about something you said, which I think is so spot on. Whenever you become an entrepreneur, and this is, of course, not 100%, but a lot of times it is a lonely endeavor. So, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, if the only people you're talking to are your prospects and clients, you're not really friends with them. Like, you can be friendly, and you can get to know them a little bit, but you kind of have that degree of separation where it's like, I'm the guy that's helping you with X, Y, or Z, not the guy that you're calling to have a barbecue, right? So you kind of need to do that, and especially for me, I moved from where I grew up. I was originally in Illinois, and I moved here to the Des Moines area just because I was spending so much time traveling. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't going to meet anybody at the office. So I was like, I got to get out and start actually meeting some local people, because then you can kind of get introduced. You start to meet people. It's just a way of making those connections that, we're people, we're social animals. You need to have that connection. So it can be very lonely, especially at first when you're doing nothing but keeping your head down and grinding. And you need to satisfy that part of it too, though. And it's going to help you in business and outside. So it's definitely worth the effort.
So, networking, just to kind of summarize everything you just said, Anthony, networking, number one, is great for business and expanding your services, bringing in money, of course, into the business. But it's also very important for just the human side of us to talk and hang out with other people. So, if we've learned anything, and it's been 4 minutes into the podcast, Anthony, you need to network because you are a human.
Yeah.
Because you are human.
Absolutely. Even if you have that 9 to 5 job and you see your colleagues all the time, you still need to network outside of that for other reasons, but also because you don't know what you don't know. If you're in that box and all you do is talk about this, to the same people every day, and the only thing you have in common is what you have to complain about, right? You're kind of locking yourself in there. But if you can go network and you're going to learn stuff and meet people that do things that you don't know, that can open your horizons. So that's why I said I wish I would have started networking sooner and started growing my networking sooner before I needed it, because you can always need it.
Right. So you are a follower, maybe a fan. I don't know if that's not a strong enough word, of Zig Ziglar, who talks about you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. And if my audience, as you're listening and watching, if you have never heard of Zig Ziglar, once you finish this podcast, please go and look him up. So what first inspired you, Anthony, to embrace Zig Ziglar's philosophy?
So it's the fact that it's not original. It's just said in a very succinct way that makes sense when you say it. But if you look at any culture, any group of people, any period of time, there's sayings that mirror it perfectly. It's like I said, the Zig Ziglar, like you said, but it's also karma. It's the golden rule. It's the reap what you sow. It's the go giver. It's the you can't outgive God. All of that is saying the same thing, right? Help yourself by helping others. And it's just, a modern way of saying it. And it's so succinct and it's perfect to say. And if you're an entrepreneur, you've probably heard of Zig. If you haven't, you should. And it just, if that's something that's been said throughout time from all people, there's probably something to it, right? I don't think it's original. It's new information. It's something that we keep rephrasing, we keep saying in a different way to kind of talk about the same thing. It's just as real as gravity. If you go out and you genuinely just help people, and eventually it's going to come back to you, maybe from somebody else, maybe in a way you don't recognize, but it is. I like to say the universe is like a giant vending machine or slot machine that if you put a dollar bill in it, eventually two come out. So how many dollar bills do you want to put in it? I'm stuffing it, right? I'm looting the couch. I'm finding the spare change. I'm throwing it all in it.
Yes.
Because, worst case scenario, you help somebody. Best case is you help somebody and down the road, it's paid back to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so when was a defining moment? Maybe this was at the beginning of your entrepreneurial career, maybe here recently, or maybe while you were still working a traditional job, the defining moment of you being selfless, you helping someone else get what they needed or wanted, and that became a defining moment for you.
Yeah, so it probably happened at the advent of this. And it wasn't necessarily a defining moment. It was a series of moments that kind of led, because I have a pretty dense skull. So it took a lot to get through it. Where I was just meeting so many people. And,
Okay.
I want to help everybody I can, but I just didn't have a way of doing it. Everybody I was talking to was doing awesome things. And if you spend any time networking, you're going to have those people that you connect with. And then for whatever reason, you never talk to them again. And that kind of feels bad. It's like, man, I really kind of dropped the ball there. I got busy. They got busy. We let it slip through the cracks. I want to be able to help them. I think I'd be able to help them in some way, but just trying to find a defined way of doing so. So, with this, it was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to help them on my business side because I have the restrictions, and most people I meet, I'm never going to be able to help in that way. And that's fine.
Right.
But wanting to help them, I decided, upon this is, what, this isn't a value add. This is something that I can do, that I enjoy doing.
Yes.
And it I always like to say this when I interview somebody, like, what do you do? And then when they answer, my favorite answer is, well, my purpose is, because that means that somebody,
Good.
that's somebody that has taken what they do and trimmed away all the other stuff. And they're left with the part of it that's their purpose. And with me, it's, I trimmed away all the stuff, the sales, the randomness. And then it's all that's left is trying to talk to somebody, help them network, help them communicate, listen to them, hear what they have to say, and treat others the way you want to be treated and reciprocate. So after cutting away all that, that was kind of the defining moment or moments that led to, where I am.
You know what, Anthony? I love the way you rephrase that from what it is that you do to my purpose is. And this is an American phrase. What do you do? So Americans are very caught up, I'll say, on what it is you do as far as your career. When you go to other countries, that's normally the very last thing that they ask, or if they ask it at all, because they really want to know about you, the person. The way you rephrase that with my purpose is puts the humanity before the career. And I love how you did that. I'm going to start incorporating that. I'm just letting you know, Anthony. When people ask me what it is you do, I'm going to say my purpose is.
Absolutely. Yeah. It says something similar enough that people recognize it, but different enough that it stands out. And that's super important. So, Absolutely. And you're right. When you ask somebody overseas, what do you do? They're going to start talking about their hobbies. Right? They're not going to talk
Yes,
about their job. And that's, you're right. It is an American thing. And it definitely hits home a little bit different when you get that different answer.
absolutely. Okay, so what would you say is your most valuable lesson? I'm sure you have several, Anthony, but what would you say is your most valuable lesson that you have learned through networking?
So if you've ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People, you recognize this. It's be interested, not interesting, right? When you're going to go meet somebody, don't do it with the intention of talking about yourself. Nobody wants that. This goes back again to the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. Everybody going to a networking event, everybody wanting, to meet other people, they want to talk about themselves because they're the only person that's going to advocate for them in the way that
Right.
they want. So let them ask them the questions that they want to talk about. Bring up the stuff about what their purpose is, how they got here, why they do it. Ask them about their hobbies, and just let them go. We all have about 3 minutes of polished material when you're out networking, where if you get past that, it kind of starts taking people off guard. And when you get past about the 10 minutes, they're completely out of it. And they start saying things like, I've never told anybody that before. And then just go. Don't expect to come back and talk about yourself right away. It'll eventually happen if the person's that kind of person. But just let them go, because what happens after a while is they're going to go, yeah, I am so sorry, Crystal. I just spent the last 10, 15, 30 minutes talking about me, and I know nothing about you. Can we schedule another call if you're running late, or I have more time, we can talk after. And they're going to reciprocate, and you're going to be able to talk about your passions, who you are, and they're going to actually listen. They're not just going to be waiting for their time to talk, because you got all that out of the way. You know who that person is. You have a deeper connection, and they're going to remember you because you're on that end of the bell curve when it comes to networking.
Oh, wow. That is so good. You seem to be very comfortable with networking. But Anthony, for the people that are very nervous about networking, that feel awkward about networking, that feel weird when they walk into the room of a networking event, and even those people who do not go to networking events because of the nervousness, the awkwardness, I don't know anyone, I don't know what to say. Give some tangible tips on how to get past the nervousness, the awkwardness, the not wanting to go to the networking events.
So a lot of that just comes with repetition. It's uncomfortable to hear, but it is. You'll get more comfortable the more you do it. But my tip would be exactly like I said before: make it about the other person. You're nervous about it because you're afraid that they're hyper fixated on you, and what am I doing wrong? What am I going to say wrong? Where if you just put it back on them and talk about them and ask them engaging questions, they're not thinking about you at all, right? They're 100% thinking about themselves. And what that's going to do is that's going to put you in a better light when they do ask you inevitably about yourself, right? Because they're going to say, this person's a great listener, and they're going to want to reciprocate, and they're going to be friendly and cordial. And you're going to, have a better conversation, as opposed to if you're standing there and you're nervous and you're trying to talk about yourself and you don't know when to interject. Just make it all about them until they blatantly ask about you. And then there you go. That's my best advice. And then as time goes on, you'll get more comfortable with it.
Right. So first step is you have to go.
Yeah,
You have
absolutely.
you have to go to the networking events. Second tip is make it about them. And people love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
So ask those open-ended questions where you get more than just a yes or no response.
Yeah. And sometimes you're going to still get a yes or no response, because here's the thing: they're probably just as nervous about it as you are. You're going to run into those people. And the best thing that you could do is, again, the golden rule: help them along like you would want to be helped if you were in that exact same, because you're in that same situation. So help them along. Be like, oh, what do you feel about XYZ? Yeah, I think it's cool. Go a layer deeper. You can ask follow-ups. There's no time limit on a lot of that stuff where it's like you can only ask one question. No, ask more.
Right, right. How do people build, and how did you build authentic relationships beyond here's my business card, here's an email?
All of that, just letting people go, because I always tell people there's going to be a I just used the word earlier and I'm blanking on it. There's a bell curve of experiences you're going to have when you're talking with people. On the very far end, you're going to remember that person. On the very left end of that spectrum, because all they did is they came in and they pitch slapped you. all you're going to remember about them is that you never want to talk to them again, right? So they're memorable, but for the wrong reasons. Then you're going to have a bunch of people in the middle that are some shade of the left, to the right, or some sort of mix. You might go, there was so-and-so, they had a dog. I remember the dog. People always remember the pets. But they had a dog. I don't remember what he does. And then that's it. You had a conversation one time. And then you have the people on the very far right that are there to actually listen to what you have to say. They're there to help you. They're going to ask things like, well, what can I do to help you out? Right. An important thing to know going into that situation is actually how they can help you out, right? Have that kind of, that idea that, there's people out there that genuinely want to help you. So if they are going to ask you that, what can you say? Well, I'd really like some introductions to people in XYZ industry, or if you know anybody that might synergize well with what I do, I partner really well with bookkeepers or whatever. Have that ready to go. So that if they do ask you, you can give them a defined answer, because you go, I just want to meet people. Now you put them in a weird situation where it's like, I know a lot of people. Who, right? And then you're going to get, but if you can have a defined answer, they're going to be willing to help you because they asked, and then reciprocate. Well, what can I do to help you out? I know some people based on what you said that I think might be good introductions. Do you think so-and-so and so-and-so doing XYZ would be good? If not, I can help you in another way. Just try and reciprocate, because again, they're on the far right end of that bell curve. You're going to remember that person forever because you're going to want to reciprocate. So be that person, and you're going to make better connections.
What about introverts? What about, your people that not only they not like networking, they barely like talking and being around crowds of people. How can you help introverts when it comes to networking?
So there's a lot of things that you can do. One, you can try it virtually, see if that makes you a little bit more
That's
comfortable.
A great idea.
Get a lot of repetition in this. This is just a conversation over the internet, right? There's all sorts of events that you can go to, speed networking events where you get a lot of repetition fast. It's really good for that. A lot of the speed networking where you're going to talk to 7 different people that you've never met in an hour, and after that, you're going to determine whether or not you want to talk to them again. So that's a good starting point for introverts, because it can be a little bit frightening to walk up to a crowd of people talking that none of them about. It can be intimidating until you get that level of confidence to where you can at least fake it, right?
Yes.
Then you might want to start with online, but there's all sorts of things out there that people do, different tricks and things. I've never done these myself, but I know some people will create a character or a persona that it's not me doing it, it's that person doing it. I think it was like Beyonce does that. She has like a persona that she puts on because she's actually fairly introverted, but there she is, super popular, right? So, so there's all sorts of things.
Right. Okay. Is there a defining moment as it pertains to networking, Anthony, that you can look back and say that changed my career, that changed who I was because of a specific networking event or a person or anything like that?
Well, I don't know if I've ever had it be something that definite where it's like I met Steve and Steve, changed my world, right?
Yes.
That happens to a lot of people, and it might happen to me in the future because I network every single day. However, I think it's just a culmination that as time goes on, I'm being persistent with it. And it's something that I'm doing, like I said, every single day. And it leads to more and more opportunities, right? So, if you have a conversation with 100 people, right, there's a good chance that after you've met 100 different people, something's going to be different about what you're doing. Whether it's going to be you're taking a different approach, you're looking at something differently, you found a power partner and you're able to synergize. Just networking in and of itself is the thing that changes things, because whether or not you're in a business, whether or not you rely on networking, you should be doing it for that simple fact that the more people that know who you are, that like you, the better it is going to be for you no matter what. Whether you're just an employee and there's people out there giving you, hey, I thought about you. You're really awesome. I think we have this opportunity in place. Opens doors that wouldn't have otherwise. Get introductions to people you would have never otherwise met. That happens every single day if you're out there actively meeting people, because you don't know who knows whom. And you don't know how those introductions can kind of spider web out to where you're 5 layers deep from an introduction with Crystal, and all of a sudden you're talking to somebody that's like, you know what? Let me introduce you to the president of this company, or let me introduce you to this. I don't pick anything, any person on the planet, right? It's the way it happens. It's all the 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
You can have a conversation with him fairly quickly, actually.
Yes. And I love something that you said. Most people say, when it comes to networking or just in life in general, Anthony, they will say it's all about who you know. And I always at the end of that, and it's something that you said, yes, it is about who you know, but it's also about and how they feel about you. Because if they know you and they like you, then they are more apt to help you and put you in connections with the president of this company. But if they know you and they don't like you, then they're less likely to help you and put you in the room with the president of the company. So you said that, and I was like, I feel that same way, and I say that same thing. It's about, yes, who you know, but how do they feel about you? Do they like you? Do they respect you? So that's a huge part of it as well. What does emotional intelligence have to do when it comes to networking?
It gives you a leg up for sure, right? It is something that you can kind of learn as time goes on how to better communicate with people. But
Hmm.
it's like saying, if you're a naturally athletic basketball player, right? It's going to be a little bit easier for you, right? You're going to pick up on things that you otherwise might not have. So it definitely gives you a leg up. I'm not saying you can't do it without it. You absolutely can. It's all the talent versus your natural talent versus your hard work. The people that are going to go the furthest are the people that have both. But having that emotional intelligence, knowing, okay, you know what, I'm getting a vibe from this person that they're not really interested in anything I'm talking about, and being able to shift to find that thing that they are. Things like that definitely help, but it's absolutely not a barrier to entry.
What about when people, and I'm a reference Zig Ziglar again here, where he says you can have everything you want as long as you help other people get everything that they want and need. How do you, and I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this question. So I'm bringing value, I'm connecting, different people. How do I still do that, but not be taken advantage of? That my value, my networking is not taken advantage of.
Yeah, and that is a hard thing because a lot of people think that just means that you have to go give everything you can to somebody. It doesn't. You just have to be able to help people in a way that you're comfortable with, because there has to be some sort of reciprocity. There has to be some sort
Right.
of moderation, right? I can't go and say, you know what, I'm gonna make 1,000 introductions to everybody that I meet. It's not going to work. I'm going to end up letting people down. They're going to be madder about it than not. But if I'm like, you know what, let me know somebody that you'd like to meet. I'm happy to make an introduction or two. That's
Hmm.
manageable, right? As long as you've had a conversation with that person and you're comfortable with it, because remember, it has to be something that you're comfortable doing, right? There's the ebb and the flow. If you really want to help somebody, and you put in effort and you help them out, and then they reciprocate, and you go, you know what, I'm gonna put in more effort on this person because it's come back. That's absolutely fine. The last thing you need to do is continue to give and to give and to give to somebody that never reciprocates. That's why, if you are talking with somebody and you spend 15-30 minutes talking about them, and at the end they go, it was nice talking with you, and walk away, that's not somebody you probably want to spend more time talking to. It's the ones that go, I really appreciate you being such a good conversationalist, even though it was mostly them doing the talking. Can you tell me about you? That's the person that you met. You go, yep, you're the kind of person that I need to talk to. Somebody that is similar mindset. Don't just pour out randomly. You can try and help everybody that you meet, but then you focus in on the ones that have some sort of way of reciprocating.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. What about those people, Anthony? And I'm so glad that you are on my podcast. I mean, you're giving such great information. I just have all these questions I keep thinking of. What about people who are struggling to see the benefit in networking?
It can be tough. A lot of times, what you're going to run into is people that are going to pitch slap you. They're going to come in and go, referral, please. Those are the people that you're just going to kind of have to work through, right?
Okay.
Like I said, there's a bell curve of people. You're going to have the people on this far end, that are just pitch slapping. You have a lot of people in the middle that
Mhm.
they might be one shade or the other, and then the really good folk. You're mostly looking for this end of it: the people that are going to reciprocate, the people that want to help you, the people that are going to appreciate the help that you provide. Because some people, they're willing, like you mentioned, they're just willing to take advantage, because a lot of them have a scarcity mindset instead of an
Mhm.
abundance mindset. A lot of that comes with business maturity. If
Okay.
you're newer in business, odds are you have commission breath. Odds are you're trying to sell everything that moves, and you don't know better. And a lot of it's not their fault. It's just, again, the maturity, how long they've been doing it, who their trainers were, how all that works out. And a lot of them can overcome that. Like, if that's you, great. There is hope, right? You can get better. It's like everything, it's a skill. But just kind of going out and knowing that, okay, there's going to be a numbers aspect. I'm going to have to talk to a lot of people to find the people that I'm actually wanting to grow my circle around. So it's going to take work. It's not easy. It's simple. You just got to go meet people, but it's not easy, right? You're going to meet all kinds, people that you like, people that you don't like, just like everything else in the world. Anything worth doing is going to have a little bit of a challenge to it. If it didn't, it'd be boring.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about some practical networking strategies, Anthony. What are some key characteristics of a powerful and effective networker?
Yeah, they're actively wanting to help the people they meet in
Okay.
a way that they're comfortable with. They're not just sitting here giving out $20 bills to everybody, right? They're actively talking to people, listening to them, and wanting to engage and help in some way, because they know that law of reciprocity, that I'm going to go out, I'm going to do as much as I can to help as many people as I can, and it's not missing that I'm going to do as much as I can. It's as much as I'm comfortable with. So they're going to have that kind of figured out because they've been doing it long enough. They're never going to ask you, especially in the first meeting, for you to buy something, right? That has never really worked for anybody long term. So if somebody's very first meeting having a conversation with you and you're being pitched something, they're not. Don't do that. It doesn't work. You might be able to do business together. You might be able to sell that person. They might be able to sell you 4 or 5 meetings in. And what really is going to stand out is the people that you meet more than once. You're going to have a lot of meetings, especially starting out, where you meet somebody one time and then never talk to them again. That's just part of it. People get busy. You're going to get busy. Finding a way to minimize that as much as possible is going to be a good thing. So things like, putting in some sort of a system to where how to follow up. You can follow up effectively, not let the things fall through the cracks. So if you meet somebody, this sounds bad, right? But it's fair. Rate that meeting, right? You're not necessarily rating the person, but rate the value of it. Okay, that was a 7-star meeting. I definitely want to reach out to that person. I think we have some synergies worth exploring, and then plan it out. Say, I'm going to, you can automate a lot of that stuff, or you can just kind of make notes. And then be willing to take notes too, because if you can remember a person's name, if you can remember things about the conversation, and then use that in follow-up conversations, they're going to like you more. Right? It's if you've ever had a conversation with somebody and you talked about your pets, and then 3 weeks later they ask you, "Oh, how's Spot doing?" Right? You're like, "Oh, that person actually listened to what I had to say." So things like that really matter. And then read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think it should be mandatory reading for people in high school, because it doesn't matter who you are. The better communicator you are, it's going to help you in the long run.
One of the things that I do, like if I'm at a networking event or, everyone's passing out their business cards, I write on the back of the business card, where I met this person and maybe 1 or 2 things about this person. Because you get home and you have this buffet of business cards, or, you have the networking thing on Monday. By Friday, okay, I can finally sit down and go through these business cards. Okay, where did I meet this person? Who is this person? Why did I get their business card? So that's one of the little tricks that I do. You get the business card immediately. Once you finish speaking with them, write on the back, okay, where was I when I met this person? And 1 or 2, facts about that person, so that you're like, okay, I remember who this person is. You can send the email, you can follow up with the phone call, just like you said, but you have that understanding of who and where and what, when it comes to that person.
Mm-hmm. Great advice.
How do you effectively follow up with people that you meet at networking events?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. You can talk to them while you're there, how they prefer. You're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to add you on LinkedIn. Do you prefer an email, a call, text, whatever? And then they'll tell you, and then write that on the card, send connection on LinkedIn, right? And then that's a good one. Another way is, with an introduction. If I was having a conversation with somebody and I want to follow up, and during that conversation, I was like, who would be a really good person for you to meet? I asked them and they like it. Then I can follow up later with an introduction. Hey, met you a week ago. Sorry it's taken me so long, but I really want to introduce you to Crystal. I think she should be a good connection. Also, while I have you, would you like to go get coffee one of these mornings? Because then you're, providing value. They appreciate that you've actually kept your word. You did the thing you said you were going to do, and then it led directly into that follow-up conversation. And from there, it gets easier and easier. The more follow-ups you have with somebody, the more of a friendship it is, and it's less of a I'm getting a hold of you for why.
Right. How many times should you follow up with someone before it's too many? So maybe you send the email, you make the phone call, but you don't get anything. And yes, people are busy, people have their lives. So how many emails do you send before you say, okay, I'm not sending any more emails or phone calls before you say, I'm not making any more phone calls?
Yeah, that's kind of one of those, in the moment, you kind of got to have the vibe. It's like, is this person busy or are they kind of ghosting me? Because if they're ghosting you, then just be like, hey, I'm really sorry to overbother you. This is the last time. Be willing to say, hey, this is the last time I'm going to reach out. I know you're busy. Feel free to reach out to me in the future. Don't burn the bridge. Don't be spiteful. It's very tempting to say, you jerk. And then you just killed anything because you don't know what's going on in that person's life, right? They could be on a trip. They could be having some issues go on. The last thing you want to do is do that. So leave it open-ended where it's like, hey, I'm really sorry. I don't want to overbother you. This is the last time I'll bug you about it. I just wanted to say, it was really great meeting you. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to help you out in the future. Hope you have a great week. Something like that. Perfect. They're going to read it and go, I'm a jerk, or I really dropped the ball here, or you'll never hear from them again, in which case, okay, it happens. You might bump into them 10 years down the road, and they're going to remember that you ended with a positive and not with a negative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. What about networking through social media, which I feel like that's made it easier to network, especially for the introverts or the people that are nervous about networking? Social media has actually made it easier to do kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's easier and it's harder, right?
Okay.
It's easier in the sense that I could talk to somebody in Canada and then over in Australia, then in Europe, then in Africa, all in the same day. There's a very wide net. It's harder because you have a bit of trust going in if you're in person, right? You have that level of we're both here. I can see you, you can see me, we can read the body language a little bit better. Not saying, again, that's not an insurmountable thing, but you have to understand that there are going to be some differences.
Okay.
It may take a little bit more of, I don't know, a different touch, right? Because if you're in person, there's things around that you can talk about. There's, other people that you can pull into the conversation if you're at an event and be like, you know what, my friend Jake over here, let me go grab him real fast. And you can kind of borrow credibility and things like that. Whereas online, it's kind of just you and that person. A lot of times if you're being introduced by somebody, you might not have had the best introduction. Well, it's like, I think that you should meet Crystal because she's also an entrepreneur. Any more info? No? Okay, we're going to do it live. And then you kind of start from a weird thing. Whereas if you're in person, you're both at an event and there's stuff that you can talk about. So it might be a little harder. But again, a lot of that just comes with practice. Don't let it intimidate you. As long as you have some of the basics down, you're going to be fine. But it does have a huge advantages in the fact that you'll get introduced to people that you would have never otherwise.
Let's talk about some networking challenges, which we've kind of sprinkled that in throughout this interview. What are some common networking mistakes that people make?
Pitch slapping is the big one. You're not there to sell anything. I think I heard it best from somebody. They're at a networking event, and you have everybody's cameras on, right? It was a virtual one, and they go, "Who here has something to sell?" And everybody put their hand up, and he goes, "Okay, who here wants to buy something today?" And everybody put their hand down.
Wow.
Right. So understand, you're not trying to sell that person. To put it in the very basic way, you're not trying to sell that person anything. You're not even trying to pitch or anything like that. You're trying to get into their phone, right? That's where the people are that you're ultimately wanting to find a sales. The people that you can collaborate with that they know, and then also that they're able to collaborate with that because that's the root of that. Where it's I don't do everything. I don't do XYZ in my business. I don't do this. I'm not an expert in this, but I know a guy or I know a gal. I can make an introduction, and then I get that gold star as if I did it myself. And then as long as you vetted that person, you make sure that they're good for your clients. That's an important part of it. But just know they're not going to buy your thing, so don't try. It's not going to work. That's the biggest mistake that I see most frequently for new networkers because they think they're always pitching, and it's the worst thing you can do.
Oh my goodness. Okay, how can people connect with people from different cultural backgrounds and different professional backgrounds. Because normally, and this is just me thinking, Anthony, normally when you're networking with people that have something in common with you. And that's how you can start the conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, I sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing. Be interested in them, right?
Okay.
And if they're from a different culture or have a different background, it's easy to be interested because you don't know anything, right? You
Mhm.
can ask questions and be like, "Forgive me for asking this, but I had heard that." People that in your industry that you guys find, whatever it is, and then you can ask interesting questions and steer the conversation back toward them, because again, they want to talk about themselves. And if they're talking about themselves as somebody that doesn't know anything about them, that's even more exciting because they're the first person to share that information. They get to see your actual experience. I know that if people ask me about, like, you guys really eat gas station pizza in the Midwest? It's like, oh yeah, Casey's Pizza is amazing. You ever had breakfast pizza from a gas station? It's awesome, right? So being able to, kind of engage with them, it's fun. It's going to make people laugh. They're going to enjoy sharing that. So the best way is just going to be make it about them, be interested in them.
I know that I found, Anthony, for me, like whenever I'm networking or meeting someone new, if they are of a different cultural background or a different professional background, I'm more excited to meet them because it gives me something to talk about. Now, this is just my lived experience. This is what, I enjoy doing, but it gives me so much to talk about. You have so many questions because you have no idea,
Mhm.
or I'm not going to say no idea, but maybe you don't know a lot about their cultural background, or maybe you don't know a lot about their professional background. So you have question after question, and it's easier to piggyback on what you've been saying the entire podcast, Anthony, to make it all about them. And it's genuine because you don't know. You honestly don't know.
Mhm.
And it's one of the things that I love about this podcast because it puts me in front of people from different cultural backgrounds, different professional backgrounds all the time. And I have so many questions because I just genuinely do not know. And for me, it's the best. It's the best for me.
It's so easy to do that if you can be interested in the person, right? If people like this exist, but if somebody just has like a really boring profession, the last thing you want to do is ask them questions about the profession. But if you could ask questions about the person, right, it definitely alleviates that. And then you might know what they do, but you don't know who they are. So there's
Mhm.
always something there. People are interesting, people are weird, but people are interesting too. So you
Yeah.
have some things, and you might find some similarities or some commonalities where, like, you know what, I never would have pictured you liking the same XYZ, weird nerdum or whatever it is that you do.
Yes.
And that's super fascinating to me.
Yes, to me as well. Okay, we're getting ready to wrap up, Anthony. I have a few more questions for you. How can someone build a legacy, whether that's professional or personal, through networking?
Yeah, so you're gonna have to define, what your legacy you're trying to leave is, because that's one of the important things. Is, people ask, how do I do blank, and it's like, great, what do you mean by blank, right? If I'm going to draw you a roadmap, I need to know where you're going and where you're at, right? So if it's just like, I want to be remembered as a person that was a really good connector, right? Then you can kind of work backwards from there and say, in order to be remembered as a really good connector, I have to know 10,000 people. I had a conversation the other day, and I can't remember his name, but he's actually out trying to meet 10,000 people and have a 10,000 1 hour meeting with somebody. I think I was number 6,782, right?
Wow.
He's building a legacy because his end goal was, I want to meet 10,000 people and have an hour-long conversation with them. So I kind of feel bad I'm blanking on his name. But anyway, that would be the legacy. So he can work backwards and go, in order to do that, what do I need to do? He was saying he's like a few years out from ever hitting it, but he's putting in the effort every day. So the best way to do it with networking is name your puppies, right? What do I want out of this? And then put the steps into place on how you're going to do it. If I want to meet, so many people in the area, maybe you don't want to be a huge connector nationally, but you want to be that person that's in town that everybody knows and they go to first if they want, an introduction, right? Then work that way. Right, go to chamber events, go to the town hall meetings, go to different things, stop in on businesses and just introduce yourselves. Things like that are going to help you achieve whatever legacy it is, but break it into smaller parts. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? one bite at a time, right? So find
Yes.
out what you want to do. I want to eat the elephant. Great. How do I do that?
Yes. People say that. I hear that saying a lot. How do you eat an elephant? And the visual for me is just so off-putting. The visual, I just
It
cannot
is.
get past that. Okay, so you have a sign right, behind you, right above your head, Anthony, that says, I know a guy. So explain to me the sign. What does that mean? I know it's purposeful behind your head right there.
Yeah, that's just the name of my podcast and newsletter,
Mhm.
where I just network and I make introductions. There's so many awesome people out there doing amazing things. I'm just trying to introduce them all to other awesome people doing amazing things, right?
Yeah.
We all have access to the internet. Like we said before, you can talk to anybody in the world basically for free, right? As long as you have the internet, right?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to talk to somebody and make a daily introduction where if you could, if you're in business or if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, you're 1099, if you can meet one new person every single day, how would that affect your life? Like we said, if you want to leave a legacy, right? That's the eating one bite at a time. You make a daily introduction, you meet one person, determine whether or not, is this somebody that's going to help me in XYZ or that I can help in XYZ? If it is, great. Reach out, have that conversation. But otherwise, here's one person, go meet him.
Yes to everything you said, Anthony, but I love that sign because it says so much. It says so much about networking is
Mhm.
what I get from it. What is your intention in the space of networking, Anthony?
Yeah, I'd like it to be my full-time thing. If I can do nothing but meet interesting people for the rest of my life, I'm going to be happy. Because, like I said, I'm very interested in who people are, what people do, because I don't know what I don't know. I'm one of those people that I believe that somebody, no matter who it is, they can teach you something, right? So why wouldn't you want to go learn as much as you can, right? There's multiple ways of doing it. You can read the books. You can, watch the autobiographies. You can have conversations with people. So you should be doing it all if that's what you want to do. The legacy that I want to leave is I want to impact as many lives as possible in some positive way. The best way that I can do that is, using my ability that I've grown is just talking with people, understanding who people are, and helping make introductions and facilitate meaningful relationships.
My final question for you, Anthony, before I get to that question, you could turn into the guy. I know you kind of slipped on his name, the guy that wants to meet like the 10,000 people. You can easily turn into that person, and wanting to meet 10,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 people and have the hour-long conversation because, again, piggybacking on something you said earlier, it feels like it's your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you talk to somebody every day, how many days is 10,000, right? So
Right.
it's definitely within reach, and it's not overly. I think it's what 10,000 hours is what makes you a master or a professional at something.
Okay.
So yeah, 10,000 hours of meeting that would make you a master networker. So why wouldn't I want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my final question for you, Anthony, on the podcast. Who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Sure. So many, right? There's so many awesome people out there. A couple of the recent ones that I've interviewed that I think would be good for you. Coach Kitch, super awesome guy. You would have a great conversation. He's um, really talented at so many things. Deaf Queen boss Kalina, she's an amazing person to know as well. Kind of seeing her do what she's doing at such a young age too is super impressive, right? When I was her age, I had no idea what I'm doing. Cody Jones, the gentleman I just released his episode yesterday, super awesome mindset coach, has his own podcast, doing all the same kind of things, trying to network, trying to find awesome people. So pick your poison. I'll introduce you to anybody and everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much for networking. But more than anything, thank you so much for being on the podcast and giving your knowledge and your time and your passion about networking. I appreciate you so much.
I really appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun, and if I help anybody out there, yeah, that's a good day. So
Yes, absolutely. And if you help anyone, let us know in the comments. We want to hear, how did what Anthony have to say impact your life, whether that's professional or personal. Now, to my audience, to my listeners, you can get Anthony's podcast on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.